All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the QUILT Show Summer Project. I'm Kristen Goddard, and I'm the Director of Marketing for the QUILT Show, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm super excited to get started on our Summer Bloom Winter Wreath project, and I would like to introduce the designer of Summer Bloom Winter Wreath and our instructor for the project, Robin Long. Robin's going to tell you more about the project and then get started. So Robin, I will hand it over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Kristen. So Kristen's going to stay in the background there. You might hear her voice come on. I'm learning a new platform here today. So I've got my notes and I think I'll be good to go, but be a little patient with me. So we're just going to jump in and get started. I've got some pictures to show you, and the first one today, this is the view out my window. So I am coming to you today from the Pacific Northwest. I live near Spokane in a little town called Ritzville, and I live on my family's cattle ranch. My husband and I just moved back here about a year ago, but you can see it looks a little stormy there, and it is kind of today. So I'm hoping my internet holds out well. If it's a little shaky, that is why it is. So anyway, we'll move on. Let's talk about Summer Bloom Winter Wreath. Let me change the picture up here. So I'm so excited about this opportunity to do this with the QUILT Show. It's a perfect format to be able to share with you my rulers and my method. And this is, my rulers are for strip piece mariner's compass blocks. So you heard that right. This is a strip piecing method. This is not paper piecing. And I can introduce you to this method. There's going to be video tutorials where I'm going to walk you through the process to make the compass blocks using my rulers and method. And then I'm also going to introduce you to some other techniques that are common in my quilts as we move along through the 3 months. So we'll be talking today a little bit more about the project just so everybody's on the same page. And then I'm going to also be doing some demos as we go along. So let me turn this picture off. So the first thing before I jump in any further is people always want to know, Robin, how did you come up with this idea? This strip piecing method. And so I started quilting in 1985, the same year I married my husband, who was a submarine officer in the Navy. And so quilting, of course, I'm quilting, and I wanted to make a mariner's compass. So you got to take yourself back to 1985 to the early 90s. If you wanted to make a mariner's compass, you bought Judy Matheson's book. You learned how to draft those compasses and then cut out all the templates to put them together. So I didn't want to do that. What was really popular in the late 80s, early 90s and new was rotary cutting and all these fun, fancy rulers. So over the course of the summer, I fashioned this crazy ruler that you see here out of a spare piece of plexiglass and some graphic tape. And I made all the mariner's compass blocks that I wanted to make at the time. But quilting was really just my hobby. And so I continued quilting my whole life. When I became an empty nester, I started quilting a lot more again. And I got this crazy ruler out and kind of got obsessed with it. And so I launched Robin Ruth Design in 2015. So that's kind of how I started. But let's now jump into what this project is. And this is a screenshot of the QUILT Show. So everything that you're going to need to know about this project, if you look up there at the Learn tab on the QUILT Show, then you can find my project. So the 2 projects, where you can find the kits and things. We'll talk about that in a little minute. And then down below, you'll see all the video tutorials that are going to be available that I'm going to walk you step by step through this project. So the project is Summer Bloom Winter Wreath. So as you're looking at these 2 projects side by side, you can see they're very similar because they're exactly the same elements in the Summer Bloom and Winter Wreath. The only thing that's different really is the finishing. So Summer Bloom can be finished into a 60-inch quilt, a little laptop quilt, and Winter Wreath we're going to finish into a tree skirt. Now, you can do vice versa. You can make Winter Wreath a quilt if you want, or you can make Summer Bloom into a tree skirt if you want. So it's just the two different finishing process because the elements are exactly the same. So let's break down the different elements for this project. Let me change pictures here. So we're going to break this down into 3 months. There'll be, again, video tutorials, new ones every month. So this month is that top block, which is a mariner's compass, a traditional mariner's compass block made with my Fat Robin book and ruler. So that's the first month. The second month is going to be that middle block, which is another one of my compass variations. It's called a round sunflower. And then at the end of the month, we're going to nest those two blocks together. That makes the center of our quilt or our tree skirt. And then the third month, we're going to concentrate on a different technique. We're going to make the Dresden band, I call it, that's going to surround those compass blocks. And then finally, in the very outer perimeter, you see some little petals. They're dark blue on the left and red on the right. Those are made using my facing technique that I use in a lot of my quilt patterns. So I'll get to introduce you to that as well. All right, looking at my notes here, making sure I'm keeping on track. So I don't know, any questions up until now, Kristen, about the elements and where to find the information?
We do not have any questions yet. We did post some links in the chat. If you're looking for where to find certain information, you can look at those links. And also, we should mention that if you do have any questions, post them in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Kristen. I meant to say that at the get-go. So yeah, please put your questions in there so we can get them answered today. So on the Quilt Show, so there are kits available to make these projects exactly as you're seeing them. And so you can see here all the the kits, the products that you're going to need. There's in the middle there, if you want to convert that Winter Wreath into a quilt, you can do that. You will need the pattern, so it's available here in paper or PDF, and then you will also need my Fat Robin book and ruler, and then my angle ruler is recommended. It's not, you don't have to have that, but I'll talk about that a little bit later when I do my demo, just to explain what you need. A straight edge ruler with a 60-degree angle is all you need, but my angle ruler does make it easier. Okay, so I just wanted to show you pictures again. So Summer Bloom, remember, is going to be finished into a 60 by 60 inch quilt. And sorry, I'm getting my pictures mixed up. And then Winter Wreath. So you can see Winter Wreath here. If you look kind of in the middle towards the bottom, you'll see kind of a green band. So basically, we're just going to split that medallion once it's put together and bind it. The actual top is going to be put on top of a piece of felt, and then it's quilted to the felt. So it'll be finished on the bottom as well. And again, I'll be walking you through all of those techniques. And then as we're going through the projects, hold on. So again, there'll be the video tutorial. So as you get started on the project, this is, if you go to the Quilt Show to the forum, this is where you can post progress photos. You can ask more questions there. I'll be monitoring that as well to help you along your project as we go. So I think that's just a good explanation of the project, hoping everybody's on board with that. And if so, Kristen, I think I will change my camera and move over to do a little demoing for you. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect.
Okay, so let me change cameras, and I'm just going to move over here for a second. All right, so let's just talk for a minute again about what you're going to need for the project. So you will need my Fat Robin book and ruler, so they do come packaged together. Everything you need is going to be in that package when you get it. I just want to talk really quickly about the book. So again, all of this information that I'm giving you now is in the Getting Started video tutorial. So there's 3 tutorials up on the website right now. The first one is getting started, so some kind of preliminary information, and then making the raw compass block. Then there's a video for the practice block finishing, and then the third video is actually for making your block for the project. So when you open the book, I just want you to be aware there are 4 color-coded chapters. The way you know what chapter you're in are by these color-coded tabs that go down the side of the book. So for the first month, we're going to spend most of our time in that first chapter, which is the Mariner's Compass chapter. Page 1 is really important. It's probably one of the most important pages in the book. I'm just going to walk through it really quickly. The first thing it says is to make a sample block. So that is why I've posted the videos to make a practice block. I highly recommend you make a practice block before you make the one for your project. It's the exact same block, so it's just going to help you get your aha moments kind of out of the way and be familiar with my method before you move on. You will need a straight edge ruler with a 60-degree angle. So most straight edge rulers have that. It's just that the angle is usually on one end or the other. It makes it easier if the angles are in the middle of the ruler, which is why I have my angle ruler that does have all the angles sort of more in the middle of the ruler. Plus, this has all the angles to make any block in my system, because there's a lot of blocks that you can make beyond the ones that we're going to do for this project. So anyway, it's a handy ruler to have. A lot of people like it anyway because there's a lot of fun angles on there and it's easy to read. So you just need, though, a straight edge ruler with a 60-degree angle. You will use a 1/4-inch seam when you are sewing, just like we do in quilting, but I'm going to ask that you use more of a true 1/4-inch seam rather than a scant. And the reason I want you to use a true 1/4-inch seam is because we want our blocks to size correctly. If you look over on page 2, so we're making a 12-inch block, which means we want it to finish 12 inches from finished point to finished point. But we actually want it to finish just slightly under, because in the finishing process, when we finish these for applique, we don't want to cut off those little points that are around the out. So if we have just a little bit of room for them to float, then your block will be a lot better. So that's why I am a proponent of a 1/4-inch seam. And again, I'll talk about this in the videos. Pressing, the other thing that's really important, probably most important, is pressing correctly. So I have very specific press as you go instructions in the book, so you'll want to follow those. And then the other thing is no steam in the construction of the raw block. I don't want you to use any moisture or steam, because as you can guess, we're working on the bias a lot. And when you start adding moisture to bias, you can get things stretched out of shape. Once the raw block is together, then we'll use some moisture or some steam to get our blocks laying flat and to the correct size. So that's kind of the important things to know from the get-go. And then we'll go ahead and turn to page 4 in the book, and this is where we'll start with the Mariner's Compass. I just want to point out that everything is kind of color-coded in here. So as you look at the block and the strips that you will cut, they do correspond to the picture up here. So when you're making your practice block, that will kind of help you to figure out what colors and where they're going to go in the block. Okay, so let me just set this aside for a second. The pattern I want to talk about just for a second. So it is got both projects in the same pattern, the summer bloom and the winter wreath. So as you go through the pattern, you'll see they're kind of side by side. just the two different color combinations and what you're going to need. Excuse me. So you can kind of see how the pattern is laid out. The last 2 pages, so you don't have to have the kit. If you want to use your own fabrics, then I've got kind of a worksheet back here, and you can kind of color in and add your own fabrics if you'd like to make this project. So the pattern is essential for making this project. Okay, so let's just get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the first month, which is making our compass block. So this is what I want you to accomplish. This was my practice block, so this is what you will make first. So I'll set this aside for a second. So we'll talk about the first video, making a practice block. This is the raw compass block. That's what the first video you're going to get to this point. This truly is strip piecing. So making a practice block, you can just go to your stash, maybe find some strips from a leftover project. You just need 4 strips of fabric to complete this block. So easy to do, and again, I highly recommend making that practice block. So let me just set these aside so it's not quite so busy here. So the construction technique, using my rulers, again, strip piecing. So we'll start by sewing our first 2 strips together, and then we're going to cut them at that 60-degree angle. So as you're going down the strip set, this is the 60-degree angle. You would cut those units apart. Once you have those units cut apart, and I've got to kind of reconfigure here, slow down a little bit. I know I'm going a little fast. Once you've got your 8 units, excuse me. Sorry, I'm not used to talking this much in the morning. So anyway, once you cut your 8 units like this, then we're going to chop them up using a straight edge ruler and my fat robin ruler. So we're going to cut off this background triangle. We're going to make 2 cuts with my ruler, left and low, high and right, and I'll demo this in a minute. And then we're going to take this triangle and sew it right back on. When you sew it back on, you get this unit that I call pi. Pi is the basic building unit for your block, and really, once you've learned the technique to make this pi unit, you've learned my technique. So it's not hard, it's not difficult, it's just a little different because you've got to learn my ruler. Okay, once you get pi, then you're going to sew 4 of those pies on the next strip. Then you're going to use my ruler again to make 2 cuts, the left and low, the high and right. Then you're going to take that pie, the 4 reserved pies, and sew them on the other side. Now we've got big pie. Once you've got your 4 big pies, right, these are going to go on the last strip. You're going to make 1 more cut with my ruler, and you've got a chunk like this. You'll have 4 chunks like this, and then we'll sew them together to make your raw compass block. So that is the technique for making the raw compass block. I think I will take just a minute here and show you those first cuts so that you can see, again, not difficult, just different. So when you get your first unit, the first thing we're going to do is cut off the background tile. Again, I'm doing this very slowly in the video tutorial, so you can pause the tutorial, reverse it, whatever. I'm just kind of giving you an overview at this point. So to cut off the background triangle, we're going to place our ruler on this side of the unit with the edge of it right on the point down here. At the top, we're going to put the 1/4 inch line at the top of the seam, because that's going to help us take into account the seam that we've taken here and that will give us a nice equilateral triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. And remember, this gets sewn back on after we trim this unit. So to make the cuts with my ruler, we're going to use kite B on my fat robin ruler. Again, left and low, high and right. So just as the sayings say, when you're making your left and low cuts, you'll look left and low. When you're making the high and right, you'll look at the right-hand side. The other thing to know about my ruler is solid lines go on seam lines, dashed lines go on raw edges. So as I approach my unit, I say to myself left and low. I find my size block. So I'm making a 12-inch block. So all those other lines, they may seem intimidating, but you don't have to pay attention to them. You're only paying attention to the 12. So I'm going to put the 12 on the seam line, and then I'm going to put the dashed line on the raw edge. And then this is going to be my first cut. That's the left and low cut. Whoops. Always when you're in the camera, it never goes as smoothly as you'd like. Okay, then high and right. I find my 12 up here. There's a dashed line that I want to bring down to the raw edge. You just bring the ruler straight down. You put the side of the kite on the seam with this middle line through the point, and that's your second cut. All right, then we're going to take that triangle that we cut off and sew it back on, and that's pie. So that is making the basic building unit using my fat robin ruler. Once you learn those two cuts, left and low, high and right, that's how you use my ruler to make any block in my system about 95% of the time. There's one other cut that you make in a compass block, so you'll find out about it in the tutorial, but it's not hard, it's just one other different cut that you make. All right, then the second video tutorial that's up there for the practice block is finishing. So I want you to notice when you make a raw block, number one, see how it's wonky out here? In class, I call that the Las Vegas part of my block. So what happens out there happens. You never have to worry about matching anything or getting things to line up perfectly. You'll just know that I have built extra room into that background strip width. So see how there's plenty of room beyond those finished points for finishing. The second thing you'll notice is the block has a hole in the middle. That's going to help your block lay flat from the get-go. So instead of having all those points meet in the middle, it's going to just wind around there and lay flat. I also call that a creative opportunity because what you do in the middle can really change the personality of your block. And then the other thing I just want to point out quickly is because this is a strip piecing method, every time you add a strip to your block, you're going back to the straight of grain. So it does help my blocks be a little more stable than other traditional methods where all the pieces would be on the bias. Okay, so the first thing you do after you get your raw block made is we want to get a center in there. And so I have just a little facing technique. There's a template in the pattern that you'll trace onto freezer paper. So you'll have a nice round freezer paper circle, and then you're going to put that on the back side of your fabric, on the wrong side of the fabric. You'll press it on there, and it doesn't go anywhere once it's pressed down with the freezer paper. You are going to put it right sides together with the interfacing, and I'm pretty darn sure that you're getting interfacing that I use in your kits if you order them. If you're not using my kit, I use Pellon P45, so that's a product that you can look for. Once you have those right sides together, you're going to sew as close as you can to the freezer paper without sewing on the freezer paper. So once I took the freezer paper off, hopefully you can see the stitching line that I just did as close to the freezer paper, but again, not sewing on it, because The freezer paper is the finished size of our center, so we want to be as close as we can. Once you've stitched around, you're going to go ahead and trim it to about 1/8 of an inch. Again, this will all be in the video. You'll pinch it up and turn it to make your face circle center. You'll press from the back ever so slightly, bringing that facing to the back because we don't want the facing to show on the front. But now I have a stable circle, a shape that's going to stay this shape until I get it into my project and to get this block then to be stable to finish. Once the center's in, then we're going to use another freezer paper circle to prepare this block for applique. And so the freezer paper will be centered on the back. There are these great stitching X's that you will see when you're done. If you press the way I tell you, you'll have these nice stitching X's, so you can make sure that the freezer paper is on the stitching X or slightly above. And then you're just going to press this around the freezer paper. Take the freezer paper out and immediately put pins in. And now we've got our block that's ready to applique into our project. So you'll make your practice block, and then when you get your kit fabric or you've decided what fabrics you're going to make, you'll make this block again and have it ready to go into your project. So that's my demo. Are there questions, Kristen?
There are very few questions.
Okay.
The first I can actually answer. First is from Sandra, and Sandra asked if the pattern for Summer Bloom Winter Wreath is included in the book that comes with the ruler. The answer to that, Sandra, no. The Summer Bloom Winter Wreath pattern is a separate purchase, and it is available in our store, and I did link to it in the chat, and you probably saw that by now. The next question is from Twyla, and this one is going to go to you, Robin. Twyla asked, when you first started demonstrating the strip piecing and you were working with some red and green fabric, Twyla asked, what do you do with the red tails from the fabric?
With the red tails from the fabric, I guess I'm not...
I'm imagining she means the red pieces of fabric that you cut off and had as little extra pieces. Do you use them for anything?
No, those are just waste pieces. So here, let me come back so I can. Yeah, no, those two, the left and low and the high and right, those little cuts, those are a little bit of waste. But most people tell me, especially the paper piecers, that there's a lot less waste using my method than with paper piecing. So, it's just part of the process.
And you can always put them aside for another project.
Exactly.
Quilting.
They're pretty tiny for this 12-inch block. They're pretty tiny, so but maybe for a crumb quilt they might work. Yeah. All right. So I don't really have anything else today. I just wanted to demo again and just let people know that those tutorials are available, that they can ask questions in the forum. Unless there's any other thing.
I'm sorry, Robin. You broke up for me for a moment. So I do have one or two more questions.
Oh, okay, good.
Annette asked, is the design the same? And I assume that what Annette is asking is the Summer Bloom and the Winter Wreath design the same?
They're exactly the same blocks. It's just using different fabrics. If you can kind of look behind me, you can see I tried to line them. I folded them in half. So they're exactly the same. It's just that I've just done different fabrics. And for the quilt, you'll just, when it's done, because the outer edges of the Dresdens and those faced petals are finished, you just applique that onto your background, quilt it, bind it, and you're done. For the tree skirt, you would applique it onto a piece of felt and quilt it. Once it's quilted, we'll split it down one side and leaving the hole in the middle for the tree skirt, because there's already a hole right in the middle when you're done. We'll split it and just bind it, and then you can add whatever closure you want on that split end. But they're exactly the same elements for each quilt.
Excellent. Okay, and one more question from Susan. If you are using your own fabric, how much do you recommend? Do you recommend fat quarters, yardage? Can you offer any advice there?
Yes, that's a great question. So you will, in the pattern, you know, there'll be all of the strips that you need to cut, everything, all the yardage. My method works better with full width strips. Okay, that's what all my tables are based on because we're cutting units out of those strips. You can use fat quarters. That's a big question I get a lot in my classes. Of course you can, but sometimes 2 fat quarter strips are not going to equal 1 strip because when you're cutting those angled units, I don't know where that split is going to be. So sometimes if it calls for 1 strip and you're using 2 fat quarters, you might need 3 fat quarters to get the number of units out of a strip set. So full width strips might be easier to get started because that's what I recommend, but by all means you can use other widths if you want.
Okay, and a few more questions have come in. And also, I want to apologize. I know I'm seeing in the chat that there's an echo. That is something that we promise we will fix it for next time. And also, in the recorded version, I believe we're able to remove that in the recorded version. So I apologize. If you have any issues understanding what I'm saying, please check the recorded version, and you should be able to understand me clearly. Now the next question is, where did it go? Should we starch the fabric before?
Yeah, that's another great question. So it's not, I don't starch my fabrics when I construct my blocks, but it certainly is not going to hurt to starch them before you start. It's just going to help them stay a little bit more stable. If you've got, you know, like a shot cotton or something that's a little bit, you know, looser weave or whatever, that might be a good idea to go ahead and starch the fabrics. But I don't normally, even when I'm using shot cottons, if you're just careful not to stretch as you go, you should be fine.
Okay, next question. When you applique a large circle onto the quilt, do you hand stitch it or do you machine stitch it?
I just saw that. So I don't do anything by hand in my projects, and it doesn't mean that I don't want to hand applique. I do some projects by hand, but anything that I design, I'm trying to make it doable for the end user. So all of my applique is going to be my machine. For this project, it's really just going to be appliqued with a top stitch, with a straight stitch, edge stitched around the edge. I think I recommend in the videos you can use like a hem stitch where it kind of goes beside and then it catches every 3rd or 4th stitch. That's a great stitch to use. You can use a zigzag. You can use a decorative stitch. Really whatever you want. You certainly can hand applique if you want to. I'm just saying that you don't have to, and sometimes that is a little less intimidating to people that don't really want to do the hand applique. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
Okay, and next question, and they're rolling in. Twyla has clarified what she was asking about the red ends before. She says actually she wanted to know about the red center of the block, the stuff under the circle.
Oh, okay, yeah. So for that small of a block, once you put the center on, I just leave that. You can certainly, after the center is sewn on, you can turn the block over and cut some of that out. In the larger block, the round sunflower, after we attach the center, we will do that. There's some kind of pieces that are round. So when they're larger and it's going to add to the bulk of your quilt, yes, you can turn it over and cut that extra out for sure.
Okay, good. And the next question is from Janet, who would like to know what size are the strips for the practice block?
So it'll be in the pattern, and also in the book for the 12-inch block, but the background strip is 3 1/4 inches, the 0.1 is 2 inches, the 0.2 is 3 inches, and the 0.3 is 4 inches. So They're not that big of a strip, and you just need one of each to make that block. And you will have some left over of the 0.2 and the 0.3 strips. You won't use the whole strips, but best to start with full width strips.
Okay, and this next question I can answer. It's from Margie, and Margie asks, does the kit that seems to have all of the items needed include the pattern? Yes, Margie, it does. The kit includes everything you need. I believe there is no quilt backing fabric in the kit unless you buy the Winter Wreath kit that does have felt for backing, but it includes all of the fabrics and the pattern and the ruler set if you purchase a kit with a ruler set to make your project. And let's see.
Irene wants to know if the pattern's in the book, and I'm assuming she's talking about the Summer Bloom Winter Wreath, and no, it's not. And it is available for download. There's PDF version, right, Kristen, on the show?
That is correct. That is correct. And in fact, the printed version is sold out. So PDF version is what you would want to go with. Okay. Plus you get it instantly.
Okay, well, maybe we can get you some more of those. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then, yes, so I've had this question. People have actually emailed me. Laura Swinney wants to know if she can make this project using her skinny robin. And you cannot, unfortunately, because fat robin blocks have larger centers, which is what allowing me to nest this block inside of this block. With the skinny, the centers are smaller, so the project, I don't have the ratios or the strip widths in the pattern to be able to do that skinny. So this is definitely a fat robin project. You know, the technique to make my block skinny or fat is exactly the same. With a skinny, you just use a 45-degree angle instead of the 60. That's really the only difference, and there is a separate ruler. But the skinny will not work for this project. You have to have the fat robin to make this project. So I hope that's clear. Okay.
All right.
I think we've got it.
I think we've got everything.
I think that went okay. I'm sorry about the echo too. I don't know. And it looked like people were having a hard time hearing me. Maybe I was talking too fast. I'll slow down next time, and maybe it will be better. Play it back, like Kristen said, and hopefully that will go away. So that's all I have, Kristen. Go ahead.
Robin, maybe really quickly, our next class for this project is August 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time in the same place.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so this month, all you got to do is get that first block made, the 12-inch block, and then we'll talk about the round sunflower. That's what we will do next month, and we'll and also about getting those two blocks nested together to move forward. So I hope you guys have a lot of fun this month learning my method and technique. You know, get those videos queued up. Oh, the other thing I want to say really quickly is as you're working, make sure you have your book out. Really pay attention not only to the video, but have your book open. It will make it easier as you go on to other blocks, because there is some referring back and forth when we get to the round sunflower block. And so the more you're familiar with my book, take some time to go through it and kind of see how those 4 chapters and what they're about. And maybe you'll have questions for me about that next time too. All right, well, I think that's it, Kristen. So I guess I will go ahead and end this for today, and I look forward to seeing everybody next month. I hope your summer is going well, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.